Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to do the first of the stabilization techniques. So you can see here, this is the final piece. If I get the light reflecting on it, you can see right there, it is very well coated. So I prepared a bunch of tiles to be able to compare. This is what you would see from a raw tile before treatment. Here you can see after treatment, I did all of these in the same batch and they were all using the sugar and heat method, which you can check out on the channel. Very consistent, very even, gave them all the exact same treatment. All of the stabilization techniques will be very comparable. And then this is the first of them. I've chosen this to be the first because it is the most basic lazy man's way of doing it. Literally a trip to the hardware shop. I don't even need to show you how to do it because all I need to say is it is a spray can of what you'll see as clear acrylic. A lot of the time they say crystal clear acrylic. There's all these buzzwords. All the cans are about the same. This is a White Knight one. I compared a bunch of different ones. They all do the exact same thing. Now, without becoming a chemistry nerd, I did look up the MSDS or SDS, whatever you want to call it, the safety data sheet for the can, and compared it to a bunch of other ones as well. And I can pop up the composition on screen. Essentially what you've got is a hydrocarbon soup. It's got a bunch of pretty good solvents and then some plasticizers and some little bits and pieces that are going to help create this glossy, hard exterior. And I say it's glossy and hard, but it's actually not that hard. It does feel a little bit plasticky. I'll let it cure a little bit longer just in case it's having some strange interaction with the stone, but it definitely doesn't feel like glass or like you would a proper opal. But if I get the reflection up, you can see it is very shiny. A couple things I want to point out though. This was a bunch of thin layers. So maybe like 5 lots of coatings, and I've left this one little spot right here. Can you see that it doesn't shine with the rest? That's because if we bring it real close to the camera, you might even be able to see it because of the macro lens. See, there's a little cluster of these deep channels there. That has actually sucked it all in and it's created a little bit of a dull spot. I've also left this piece with the saw marks in it to show that you really do want to have your stone fully finished basically before this. So a lot of the time on these spray can applicators, it'll say to finish the stone to about a 600 grit, and that's the 600 sandpaper grit. So you really don't even need to get it to a pre-polish. That's still pretty rough, and you can see I left it just pure neat saw, so straight off the sintered saw blade, and you can see you definitely can't coat it so much that you disguise these. You are still getting all of the features that were originally there, including a bunch of little pores. But if you do get a cluster of pores, a little bit of capillary action gets involved and sucks it in, because the hydrocarbon cocktail that I was talking about before, some of the solvents are really good solvents, so they will seep into the stone. But let me just nip off a little corner and we'll see how far it's penetrated into the stone. I'm assuming not very much, but there's only one way to find out, so I'll just nip it off and we'll double check that as well. Alright, so here we have it. I didn't even need to get the Dremel, I just nipped off the corner, and you can see right here, if we look nice and closely, it is not penetrating at all really. So it is super surface level. So in terms of stabilization, this really isn't a stabilization. This is more of just a clear coat on the surface. If the surface is loose, then yes, it will stabilize that surface, but we're talking like less than a millimeter of penetration, less than a millimeter deep into the surface. So if the rest of your stone is crumbly, like the back here that I tried not to cover but it ended up seeping through, it will still remain crumbly, and inside the core of this stone, it is still the exact same as what it was originally, which really isn't too much a problem if you just chuck it in a setting or something. The stuff is still pretty sturdy. If you were to bezel set it or something, I don't think it would really complain too much at all. But the other thing is, you can see the color is starting to leap out. If we compare it to the piece right next to it, you can see there's this faint bar of purple just there. But this one also looked like it had absolutely nothing until the clear coat was put on, and now it's got quite a bit of color, which is good. Very low grade stuff though for all of this torture. Don't want to use the good stuff, but once we do come up with the final method, I will be doing the whole process on some high quality stuff. But this one, you can see there's a little bit of a green streak that runs through, bit of a purple, and then just a scattering of green and purple elsewhere. If you're going to do multiple stones at once, be careful of having them in contact with each other. They will kind of glue together and you will start getting these peeling off flakes. So this is actually what the can is depositing. Once the plasticizer and the solvents evaporate and the plasticizer kicks in and does its thing, you'll end up with this basic film is what's coating the entire stone. It's a little bit stronger once it's actually impregnated onto the surface. And what else is there to say? These cans can be bought online from your local hardware store. I wouldn't be surprised if they've got them in arts and crafts store as well, because a lot of the time people will just go over the top of some of their paintings, especially if they're chalk or something that can rub off. You just do a quick flash of this over the surface and it locks it in place. Just remember to go for a gloss one. Most will be pretty much the same. You try to make sure you get the non-yellowing one. I will try to make a accelerated aging chamber for a lot of my resin work when it comes to opal. So when I get the shed made, that'll be one of the big projects that I work on. But you can get really, really cheap ones that will yellow quite dramatically very quickly as soon as it's exposed to UV. But all in all, that's it. So the exact same material, one slab across from the other. That's the change that you can get just with sugar and heat to get the darkness, and then a little bit of a spray can. Cheap and nasty, except I will say, as our final point, it is not so cheap. Just a single can of this stuff will probably coat a couple hundred stones for sure, and there's a lot of wastage when it comes to spray because it goes all around. You don't want them near each other, you don't want them to stick to anything that they're on. I just use the plastic sheet behind it, but these cans are not really cheap. And then of course when you go too cheap, you end up getting the ones that will yellow very quickly. This one was kind of a higher priced, or maybe a mid-range price. I've seen some crazy ones, but all in all, the finish that it's had, not great. I could do a couple more coats to finally try to get these channels to block up, and all of these other little ones here and there, they're all still a little bit active, so they're still soaking in a bit as well. And like I said, this is 4 or 5 coats, and not the thinnest coats in the world either, because it's a small stone. I kind of just sprayed it on until it pulled on the surface, but at least it doesn't get any bubbles or anything like that. It does actually level itself out quite well, and it's just a little bit soft. I wouldn't want to work on it again because the penetration is so poor. It's definitely not going deep into the stone. This is a final step after you've got the stone to a reasonable state. Fully shaped, left to about 600 grit. You could go a little bit higher. I reckon it will still stick just because of the porosity of the surface. But yeah, if it's for you, it's for you. It's probably not for me. I can think of a lot of better ways to do it. And of course, those will be coming up on the channel, and then we'll do a compare and contrast between all of them. I'm not joking, there are so many methods that I have prepared just off camera here. That's not even half of them. That's probably still not even half of them. So I've got a lot of these ready to go because there are so many different options out there, and I want to find out which one's the best so I can commit to it myself. This stuff is super cheap. Even the high quality stuff is well worth buying, and it's actually really easy to cut, shape. Don't have to polish it, just get it to a decent state. Just treat, stabilize, you're all good to go. And as you can see, for those that struggle with polish, you do this enough times, you will get a very nice shine. Just got to be careful of all those little pits. I will say this method could be used on any kind of fossil specimens or anything that you want as well. I've seen the museums use something similar to this on the more insignificant little fossils that they just want to protect for long term, just in case they're going to crack and crumble apart. So yeah, hope that helps. From start to finish, you should end up looking something like this. Decent result. The only real advantage is really easy to get, just hardware shop. So give it a try if you're interested. Otherwise, hang around, wait for the other methods that I'll bring up. They might be harder to do, but they will get better results. Always good to weigh up options. Anyway, see you later guys. I will keep going on the next one.